Well, everybody,
Hello.
good to see you all. I found the cat's owner in case you saw my email last night.
Excellent.
It's a
Yeah, I
nice
can't
looking
believe-
cat. He looks
What's
very
that?
cozy. It's a nice looking cat, and he looked very cozy at your house.
Yeah.
I missed this. There was a lost cat.
Yeah. I just, when I sent out materials last night or yesterday evening sometime, I just noted that I had been delayed because I had been caring for this cat that I found, but I found its owner.
Oh, good. Good. It was a beautiful cat.
Yeah. I can't believe how much time and energy that took yesterday. I was trying to juggle all these different things because I had to prepare to house this cat overnight. You know, I was going to take care of it overnight. It didn't turn out to need to do that, but I wasn't set up to have a cat, a strange cat, an unknown
Litter
cat
box.
in my house.
It
So
requires some setup.
yeah, it does. Yeah.
I actually did hear about this somewhere. I think someone posted on something on my city council page or something, and a woman named Mary I feel like her name was maybe Mary Ann Devine. I don't know if she helped you, but she, I saw the post that he had gotten home and
Oh,
the person who had him was planning on keeping him for the night. That must have been
yeah. Yeah.
the big Monona scoop last night.
Well, what I discovered is there is this formidable lost pet social infrastructure out there. I mean, there are people, there's a squad or
Yeah.
or maybe a whole division out there, people geared up.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's really nice that people are ready to offer help. If you can't handle things yourself, people are ready to come over and help or take the animal themselves.
Absolutely. I think last week there was a puppy or a dog, a little black and white dog, like 9-pounder that had been, he had a dog sitter and got away from the dog sitter. And there were sightings everywhere. Like, I just saw him on Dean. I just saw him on Broadway. And it was like all these people were out chasing him and he got home fine. Amazing. He'd been out nights and it was like 30 degrees. Little tiny
Yeah.
doggy.
Yeah. Wow.
Amazing.
So happy ending on that.
I was going to say, speaking of taking a village to raise, I'm coming to you from our daughter and son-in-law's house because their little girl is 12 days old today. So
Congratulations.
thank you.
Cool.
Yeah,
Fun.
congratulations. And I think before you got into audio contact, Marianne, I was commenting on that I had not ever noticed clouds on the ceiling behind you in previous meetings, but this explains it. Okay.
This is not my house. This
Right.
is a 3-season room. And yes, they painted clouds on the ceiling.
Fun.
Yeah, that's nice.
Works nice in a Zoom environment too.
Hey, Christy?
I said it works nice in your Zoom environment.
Yes, it does. It does.
Well, let me check. Do we have minutes to approve, Brian?
We do not, because I
Okay.
didn't get access to the video until late in the afternoon this afternoon. So I'll do this batch for today and then the ones from the last time and have them ready for your next meeting.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thanks very much. At the end of this meeting, we'll talk about our last scheduled meeting, which is a week from now. But this is Brian's last meeting, and I don't know whether everybody knows or not, but we are the city of Monona and all the community is losing Brian. And so, Brian, if you could just tell us so everybody knows what's happening with you.
Yeah, sure. So next week, Wednesday, will be my last day with Monona. Going over to the city of Middleton. Their city administrator retired after about 23 years on the job. And it was, as I've told the mayor and city council members, it was one of those opportunities that I couldn't pass up professionally. So yeah, I'm going to be starting there on May 2nd. So my last day here in Monona will be next week. So
Congratulations.
thank you.
Congratulations. You'll be missed.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
For sure, right. You've been a great city administrator. I mean, you've been so helpful to us. I have friends who are in the planning business who have had a chance to work with you. Everything I've heard about you and your service to the city has been so positive and laudable. So we are all sorry that we're going to leave you, but happy for this. It is a great opportunity. Very happy.
Absolutely. Great. Congratulations. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, let's raise your yellow Zoom hands or your real hands. Give Brian a round.
Thank you very much.
Oh, that's nice. Cornucopia. Hey, I also wanted to mention that our member Christy Goforth has recently finished her term as an alder on the Common Council. We really appreciate your service there, Christy. You're always such a strong and consistent voice for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Really a strong presence on the council. That has been just a blessing for the city and for us. So thank you very much for your service. We will miss your voice on the council.
Thank you so much. It's been phenomenal working with each and every one of you. I feel really privileged to have this opportunity for sure. And so if you need to email me after this, my email is info@goforthmonona.com. So info@goforthmonona.com.
Are you struggling with some allergies, Christy?
No, I have just gotten my butt kicked from a really nasty cold, actually.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, but I'm on the home stretch. I swear. It's
Okay.
been 3 weeks.
Well, feel better. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we'll cover today is three topics. Last week, we had a discussion about a committee to follow us, and in particular, wanting to respond to one of the items in the original resolution that created this work group, which was to make recommendations concerning a formal committee, a formal DEI committee. And we shared different points of view and decided that we would share those points of view in our report with the mayor and the council, but not make any specific recommendation. Really, there were different points of view about the value of having a permanent standing DEI committee created by the city versus having some group come from the community to continue to advocate for our cause and hold the city and the community accountable. But we actually didn't discuss another alternative, which I think, which Karen will speak to, and which I think Karen has raised before. It just didn't enter into discussion, didn't enter into my mind last week, because in terms of responding to the charge about a formal committee, I was thinking of a permanent standing committee, but there could actually be another temporary committee. And so, Karen, I want to invite you, and especially because, you know, something in my conversation with Karen that really struck me was that as the Nehemiah Center continues to work with the city, it would mean a lot to have a formal group in place. So go ahead and expand on that, Karen.
Yeah, thanks. Definitely totally hear the different points of view on a permanent committee. And I think it's a great idea to lay those options out in the report for long term. But I would really strongly encourage you to suggest another 6 months to a year, probably a year, temporary, another, like basically like what you all did, except an implementation team. So their job isn't to continue for the long term, but it's to get some balls rolling on the recommendations that you put in place. And that could be developing some plans. It could be specific assignments to city staff and departments, because otherwise it's going to be really difficult. If you basically, if you leave it up to just the council, probably nothing will happen. And that's just kind of the reality of how these reports work. So I'll throw that out there for your feedback, but I would strongly encourage you to recommend an implementation short-term group, just to kind of take the recommendations that you make to the next step.
So discussion on that point. I meant to go through the 3 topics as an overview, but I dived into this one. So let's go ahead and discuss this idea.
And that doesn't have to be you folks. You mean a completely new set of appointees to that committee. I mean,
All right, then
sure
I'm
that
all
y'all-
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So bright-eyed
I'm
and
sure
busy
y'all
girl
could
folks.
apply to be on it if you wanted to, but this would be you recommending a completely new committee. Go ahead, Marianne.
As one of the people who was for having a formal committee, because I thought that would help with accountability, I'd also support this because I agree. I think without a formal committee that has some sort of authority of the city behind it, I think we'd be hard pressed to really get some traction. I think with a community only committee that doesn't have any city government behind it, or just laissez-faire, ground up. I mean, something wonderful could happen, but more likely life gets busy and nothing would happen because there's no accountability, no deadlines to be met.
Well, and also no impetus or, tie for the city to take the community's recommendations.
Mhm.
So I wasn't in on the conversation, and it sounds like what you're suggesting, Karen, is prudent, right? And I would be in favor of that. I wonder, well, I was just thinking to myself, a committee gets a report like this. I guess it would be good if there was some continuity from this group. And that's not me volunteering, but it's some continuity to offer context and some, I mean, not that we're an institution, but there is some memory here and some kind of context, right, around what we hope will be some beautifully streamlined recommendations in a report. But I can imagine people scratching their head or misinterpreting or that kind of thing. So some way to bridge this committee with the future one sounds like a good idea too.
I think I agree with everything everyone said. I think it's a great suggestion because especially, we're going to be hiring a new administrator as well. And so I'm trying to remember historically how long that has taken us. I think it's typically been about 4 months.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the market,
Yeah.
this time of year is better than like in December, January. But I'd say 4 months is probably a good, if you get somebody in by end of August, you're doing pretty good.
Okay. So I was thinking that I like the idea also because then this committee can be active during budget season and have a voice there. So maybe we can get some, priorities set that align with the report. And I also think it's good to have maybe a couple or a few members from this committee on it, like Catherine said, to provide some historical context. But yeah, I think that's a great alternative to what we were thinking.
Anything else?
Any thoughts there, Jerry?
No, I think that all sounds great. I don't think I have anything to add. I agree. The main thing is the accountability long term. I want there to be some accountability that happens on implementation down the road. So however
Okay.
that works, I'm for it. So
Great.
yeah.
And we'll be working with that new committee as well. So we can think about is there one meeting where a couple of this, if there's no one that really wants to continue, which is totally understandable and fine, then, we could even set up one meeting where it's kind of a handoff meeting. Or Harry and I will be there to make sure that your intentions get communicated as well.
Yeah, and I think people from this group can always be consulted or invited to come to speak or participate in discussion at a specific meeting as topics call for. So I think there's plenty of ways that the continuity can be done.
Yeah, great.
Okay, that's the direction we'll go in. We'll include that in our recommendations for a formal but interim or temporary time-limited implementation team. And we can also still include our thoughts about a standing committee, which were mixed. That is a different matter, and we can include those in our report too. When we get to the third topic, and I'll tell you what the second one is in a second, but the third topic will be another chance for us to go through the list of recommendations. And this is a big piece of the writing that we are not very far along. But there is that recommendation about having a community group. And maybe we can still discuss what kind of grassroots-based group we might want in addition to this implementation team. I guess I bring that up because I'm not very clear on that recommendation myself at this point, but let's save that for when we look at the list of recommendations again. So that'll be our third topic. So the second topic is really to just field any feedback anyone has at this point about the introduction, the draft of the introduction, which is fairly complete. It's still a draft, and there still might be several topics or points we want to touch on that are not in there. But it is a piece that is a pretty fluid narrative at this point. And I talked about this a little bit last week, but this is our chance to actually offer a narrative for why Monona needs to step up and provides kind of a philosophical platform for the recommendations that we've come up with and that we'll be writing up. So this is our chance to tell a story about where Monona is at and where we hope Monona will go. Do you all have the document from the link that I sent out yesterday? I don't know if it's helpful for me to put it on screen, share my screen.
I did not receive it. It probably went to my city council email.
Oh yeah, darn.
I'm kind of in that weird transition period, so yeah.
Okay, give me a second. Let me fetch the.
And if you just want to put a link in the chat, that I could peruse it there.
Yeah, I will. Well, this will take me a second, Christy. So let me just say, for those of you who have looked at it, let's just open up discussion. I also wanted to say, Karen, jump in at any point as kind of a co-facilitator of this, okay? So I'm going to fetch the URL, but I also have to add you to that folder, Christy. So let me make sure I have. Can you just say
I can
that?
I can add her while you're saying other
Okay.
things.
Did you get the email address?
Yep. Info at Go Forth Monona, right?
You got it. .com.
Okay, so was that Go Forth Monona one word or Go Forth.Monona?
Yep. Just goforthmonona.com.
Okay.
Yep. One word.
You
Okay.
should have access.
Thanks so much.
All right.
And then we're looking at the combined list, Jason.
No, we're actually looking at
Well, the intro right now. Sorry.
right, the intro. So there's a folder called report drafts at the root level of our Monona DEIB folder. And inside report drafts, there's just one document at this point called introduction pieces, draft for group review.
While people are getting in there, Jason, I didn't see your email about meeting on Tuesday. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we were
No.
supposed to be working together. And I said, hey, yeah, let me know if you want to meet. And then I didn't see the email. So sorry about that.
Yeah, so as an aside to you, Catherine, that everybody can listen to. So what's not in this current draft is are the pieces that you
Mhm.
had suggested, and that and you had provided some material, but I had not tried to work it in yet, and
Okay.
was interested in seeing if you could work on that. So that's not in here, but please, feel free to let people know what those additional pieces would be.
Okay, well, I'll just say it before we start then that I wanted just to have a sentence that spoke about the land before colonization, right? And just to sort of speak to, and I was looking at an article I shared with you at one point, Christy, about, from Aaron Birdbear, about the names of the lakes and the four lakes. And then I realized that we had that stuff about naming, and I asked Jerry, and I guess the folder of all the names around Monona places were in there, and there was a lot of convergence there, but there was some divergence in the two sort of pieces that I got from Aaron Birdbear and then Bill Quackenbush. And so I was just going to try and work something in that sort of sets the sense of place as not just being about the founding of Monona. And then some stuff from higher education about diversity is good and higher education works to have diverse student bodies in workplaces because it actually results in advancing the mission. So those are the things that aren't there yet. Is that all, Jason?
Yeah, yeah. We have been looking, thought it'd be good to provide some evidence for why diversity was a good thing. Becoming more diverse is a good thing. And I actually found a mixed bag of evidence when it comes to it's a trope now in the world of business to say diversity is good. It helps us solve problems. It helps us innovate. That kind of a narrative really catches fire and gets passed around a lot. When I looked for evidence, the evidence is mixed. And it's not that diversity isn't good, but it's diversity if there is true integration of people through the different layers of the workforce, and investing resources in the newer, more diverse parts of the workforce and giving access to leadership to those. Those are all conditions. It just seemed like a lot to get into. So I didn't actually get very much into that, but that's why we were looking at various sources of that kind of evidence.
And I did just want to suggest there's a couple places where you're describing data. And so if it's all right with you, I'd like to create like a bar chart or a visual just to break it up a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, you mean use some of the figures?
Like
and
with
create a
color
chart?
and stuff?
Yeah, so like there's a place where you talk about like neighboring cities and the growth, like one is twice as much or 3/4 as much. So you kind of in narrative form describe the relationship, and I could create a bar graph that shows that pictorially just for people that are more visual processors.
Yeah. Any reactions to Karen's idea?
It's a good idea. And it just breaks up the prose too, visually, a report. It really helps. It's a long report.
Yes, I had a couple comments about it, the report. And I hope you guys don't mind. I had my husband look it over, and then when we were discussing it, my daughter weighed in with some comments too, because she was feeding the baby and happened to be. And the reason I had him look it over is we've all been really enmeshed in the discussion. And so we know where things are coming from and what is meant by it. And I wanted somebody who was reading it cold to say, does this make sense to you? One of the comments, and maybe the graphs will help, is they were wondering if, my husband was wondering if actual numbers would make it clearer than percents. Because he said, if we're dealing with, 10 families total and you add one, that's going to look like, 10%. And if you're dealing with 100 families and you add 5, that's going to be a lower percent out of there. So the thing about percents versus actual numbers. So painting a clear picture with the census data. Also, the phrase "not white alone." I knew what you meant by that, Jason, because you talked about that more in depth in your first email. But to somebody reading the report cold, might not realize what "not white alone" means. That it's
Yeah.
So that was the other thing. The other thing, you did address that diversity just by itself isn't necessarily good if people still live in their separate silos and they aren't working together. So you do talk about that in here,
Right.
which is good. The other thing is on the last page, and you talked about that we didn't, with the exception of the police chief, we didn't reach out to other people. And I was going to say, we did reach out to the MG School Parent Diversity Council. And and I found that to be valuable information. So we should probably note that we did reach out to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
And then as a whole side piece, my daughter, husband, and I had a whole comment about what would make non-white people want to move to Monona. And my husband talked about, housing prices, and you could buy bigger and newer in the other burbs. And my daughter talked about her high school experience and post-high school. And she said, well, it helps if there aren't Confederate flags on the cars in the high school parking lot. She said, who wants to move their kid there? So anyway, those are, I found it excellent, Jason. You put a lot of work into that, and a big lift. But those were the two things about making the census data a little bit more clear to somebody who doesn't have a background in reading census data, and then including the parent council. I only saw one typo, and I'm not even sure I can find it. That was a word that was repeated. So I'm sure when people edit again, they'll see it. I underlined it, but I can't find it off the top of my head.
Thank you, Marianne. Yeah. Certainly not surprising that not white alone is tough to figure out. I'll have to think about that.
I don't know if you want to use the word mixed, because some people feel offended at the word mixed. Identify with more than one non-white group, or identified an additional group in addition to white.
That's but it's also those people who identify themselves as belonging to one racial group. So it's everybody except for those who said, I'm white, and that's it.
Explain that in your original census report that you brought out, you
Yeah,
almost a whole paragraph to explain that.
yeah, yeah, right.
Dense for this.
Right.
Another thing we could do with that is, because, you know, I think that when we put together the whole report, it would be nice to do just a little bit of basic design, throw in some pictures, maybe a little formatting. And so that could be something where you could actually include like a call out box that just says not white alone equals, you know, so you were specifically defining that.
Mhm.
Or we can also think about if there's other terms that we can use.
Yeah. Marianne, with respect to your husband's comment about percentages, I don't know that I don't know that it makes sense to use anything else except percentages.
Okay.
It's tricky. I mean, it's tough when you're trying to be brief.
Mhm.
Or that's so then I can see what the bar chart or pie chart would look like. But
Mhm.
also for the data nerds, we can link directly to the census page.
Mhm.
So if people, you know, are interested in that information, they can find it easily.
And maybe when there's the visual graphic that will help with some of the concept too.
Yeah, I'm just trying to take a quick look. You know, I have that whole document. Yeah, I do have population figures. I have that original census data document that
Let's make that an appendix.
we were, yeah, thinking of making that appendix. That does contain a table of the populations of all these different municipalities.
Yeah, there you go.
So that, you know, when I wrote the introduction, it was with that in mind that would be in the report. I just didn't, you know, it's just a draft and it could mention that or have a footnote pointing people to that table.
Mhm.
That's why it's not there at this point. So any thoughts whatsoever on the introduction? But again, the important thing is to build some kind of narrative that people can relate to, whether they agree with it or not. They get the point.
Mhm.
And so I wonder if there are any ingredients in this that don't seem to serve that narrative or that seem to be missing from such a narrative.
Did the Chianti Furge incident, this is my COVID time warp at play, did that happen in 2020 or 2021?
20.
2020.
Okay, the report, I just saw it in the report, it says that it took place about a year ago. It says
Really? Oh,
unlawful detention of Chianti in June 2020. And then it goes on and it says ignited concerns. While the specific event that precipitated Monona's introspection about race in our community took place almost a year ago. So
oh,
it's actually 2 years ago. I'll just put that in as an edit.
oh yeah, thanks.
You got it, Karen. I see your cursor there. So yeah, 2 years ago there.
Right.
But it's, yeah.
I think it looks great, Jason.
I agree.
Oh, yeah. I mean, huge amount of work. And it's like building a case.
Absolutely.
Hi, Alicia. I had other documents in front of the Zoom window, so I didn't see you show up. Welcome.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize it wasn't muted. Hi,
Hi.
we are on the home stretch to graduation here.
Yeah.
So I was in a student appointment. They're in a panic, graduating, no job.
Yeah. Well, I'll just wait another minute because I know well, I'll wait as long as you want. I know some people are just taking in, kind of reading through the piece, so I don't want to rush things, but
We're looking at the intro linked in the chat.
Jason, I also agree that it looks great. I did kind of glance through it, read like half of it before the meeting, and then just hearing the discussion that people are bringing to the table at this meeting. I want to spend a little bit more time, looking at it and then get additional feedback. But I do
Great.
appreciate the work that was done. As I was kind of, when I started reading through it, it was reading really well, and a lot of the things that we discussed about including into the document. So nice job there. Appreciate it.
thank you. Yeah, and definitely welcome comments from you via email or as comments in the document. That'd be great for any of you.
Well, while people are doing that, I found the typo, reading it over. It's on page 4. Bullet point 1.
Okay.
Oh, there's 2 issues there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Issues. Those are the really tough issues.
A lot of issues.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I'll mention is that in the section background on the ad hoc work group and its process, there is a list of bullet points. When Catherine and I were talking about kind of trying to outline the content of this intro, we agreed that it would be good to talk about some positive assets that really actions that Monona has taken recently that serve as assets for moving the community in this direction. I also was going to mention that I met with Mayor O'Connor 2 Saturdays ago just to bring her up to date on where we were and tell her that we intended to have our last meeting at the end of this month and not go beyond that. Also told her that we would probably still be finishing the writing sometime into May, but mentioned to her that we wanted to put a list of steps that the city has already taken that start us moving in this direction. And Mayor O'Connor and Brian put their heads together and offered up this list, which I've reworded, paraphrased a little bit of it, but this is basically the list that Mayor O'Connor and Brian came up with. So if there are other things or comments you have about this list or other things you'd like to add, that would be great too. Oh, the one thing I did add, the last bullet in that list was the resolution that the city council approved about racially restrictive covenants. I think the word deploring is the right word. I didn't go back. It's got question marks because I wanted to go back to all the groupies resolution to see exactly, remind myself exactly what it said and make a specific reference to it.
Did you drop that in the chat, Jason, or are you showing that on the screen?
What are you speaking of?
Yeah, sorry, did you drop that in the chat or are you sharing your screen?
That point that I just spoke to?
Just the list of items that you were just
Oh,
talking about.
that's in the intro document.
It's page 4 and page 5.
Yeah, that's pretty much the list that you worked on with a little bit of rewording here and there. And that one additional bullet at the end.
Catherine, I have a question for you and, well, actually for you and Jason. You talked about putting in a First Nation sense of place, naming.
Mhm.
Where were you thinking about putting that into the document?
I was thinking about opening with it,
Um,
just to sort of say Monona is a place that has a history that
Before the prefactory note or just after the prefactory note and before a case for change?
Well, Jason put all that stuff in there, so I didn't think that far ahead. Jason?
I have no idea. I thought you would, the inspiration would probably show
Just
up in
rain
your
down
mind.
on me and it would just flow out of me. Yes, so we're
Right.
just waiting for that to happen, Marianne. I'll let you
Yeah, right, exactly. It could happen in either of our minds, but I'm guessing it's going to
Totally.
happen in Catherine's first. That's
Yeah.
just my
So,
instinct.
also, we need to figure out who's lived here the least longest.
Mhm.
It's not
Okay.
me.
So I moved here in 2014.
I moved here in 15.
Okay. So far the way-
2007 for me.
When did you move here?
2007.
Oh, okay.
2000. Yeah, because I moved here in, well, 1954.
2010.
Looks like Christie of 2015.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I wanted to put that into, go that these are people who are rooted in Monona. This isn't a bunch of outside agitators just coming in and trying to make trouble for the city. These are people of the city that are bubbling up this idea.
Do people want more time on this? I mean, right now or ready to move on?
I feel like it would be easier for me to do it not in a meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just so that I can have some time with it and
I was going to say there's one other blank space that I think Karen can research and put in. And that's when we had the public forum with the Newmeyer Center.
I just added that.
Oh, okay. That's what I get for working off a paper copy while I'm talking to you guys.
Actually, but now did I get it wrong because was it 20 or 21?
I think it was 20.
I think
I
it
was gonna
was.
say,
Yeah.
because we were meeting by the time it was 2021.
Woo,
Yeah.
time flies, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I added one, excuse me, a one spot right at it's right at the end of the introduction. It's the very last paragraph. It starts with while the specific event. And so it talks about, we need to have the resolve to stick with the work. One thing though, I think we maybe want to consider emphasizing as well is setting this as a priority that has resources behind it. Because like at the last meeting, Brian mentioned how, we're resource thin and we don't have a lot of money, but we did have money to buy an $8.6 million park. And so, I feel like, it just has to be a priority that, that is this really important to the community? If it is, we will find those resources and put behind there.
Where is this again, Christy? On page 7, the very last.
Right at the end of the introduction portion, and it's right above a heading that says background on the ad hoc work group and its process.
Okay. Oh,
Okay.
persistence and more persistence. Yes.
Right.
And I think persistence is good, but when it comes to city government, you've got to have resources behind it. We've got to have budget. We've got to have, whether it be that staff person, whatever, we do have to have that commitment to it being a priority.
So being kept a priority and resources. Yes.
Great, thanks. We will definitely work that in there.
Yeah, that goes back to having something formal committee-wise with the city for accountability too.
Well, should we jump on over to the recommendations? That was the third point, right, Jason?
Yeah, and then at the very end, let's talk about the next meeting. So please do send additional comments on the intro by email or add them in this document. The sooner the better. All right. Let me share my screen for a few moments. I sent links to the our working documents. Those links haven't changed. The links were to two documents that Karen had prepared. One was kind of a short version of our list of recommendations, and one was the longer, more complete version that included all of the information from the subgroup documents as well. And the new document that I'm just going to show on screen that you also have the link to is this visual, this mind map. And that's the whole thing. And I can enlarge it if you need to, but let me point out the overall structure. So in terms of the recommendations, we'll have three parts to it. One is on housing and transportation policy. And the next is on city operations. And finally, community capacity building. So a couple of these have slightly freshened up labels to them. And at the top of each of these areas, the color coding comes from Karen's document. The color of the text shows which of the subgroups the particular item was sourced from. That becomes less and less important as we go along, but that is a carryover from Karen's document. And then the red text at the top of each of these areas is just the seed of a a statement, a paragraph at most of introduction for each section. And so let me blow this up a little bit. So for housing and transportation policy, we'll just lead off by saying something about how there is solid evidence that diversity in housing types and affordability levels is necessary to support diversity in the community. And then within this, of course, we're making the point that you've got to tie access to transportation into that housing diversity. For the second part on city operations, the prefatory statement or short paragraph would be something along the lines of city government and policy has a dual impact. It makes government more open and inclusive of itself, and it sets an example that stimulates non-governmental work and progress in equity and inclusion. Oh, by the way, these green things, they signify the ones that we pulled out as quick wins, low-hanging fruit. And then for the community capacity building, there would be an introductory statement that says something like a climate of inclusion needs to be rooted in the community itself, cannot be created by government action alone. So we reserved a little time because we did look at these lists before. Didn't have a lot of time and didn't have a lot of time for people to look at them beforehand. So we just wanted to give us all another chance to comment on our list of recommendations. I think Karen and I, when we work on these, we will, I think I've said this before, there will be times when we think, what did we mean by that? This is a little ambiguous, and we may need to come to you with questions. And so please be ready for that.
This looks super organized and makes it seem like we were streamlined the whole way. I can't work with this document. It's a PDF and it even has like the dialogue box on it. So whatever form it's up in the hard drive, I can't actually, it's like a screenshot, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right, right. Do you want to work with this document? We were figuring people would just work in the previous documents. This was just kind of arranging things in a.
No, that's fine. I didn't know if you
Okay.
wanted us to have access to it, but if you wanted us to have access to it, right now it's just a screenshot with a dialogue box in front of it. So it really doesn't.
I didn't know there's a.
I had a hard time, and I didn't know if it was operator error on my part, opening this to fully look it over. So I appreciate you doing the screen sharing, Jason, to
Okay.
show where you're going. It looks trimmed down.
It's the
So
same list.
it looks less than what we're working with, at least with Group A and Group B.
It's
some
the
of the things,
format.
um,
It's the same list that that Karen provided, exactly the same, except under city operations, there are two that are lumped under support minority-owned businesses, but the items are exactly the same.
Okay. I was gonna say some of the community education stuff I don't see in here.
That's in the detail that's in that longer document that Karen collated for us.
So these are just kind of the highlight of the
Okay.
recommendation.
Okay,
And then in the actual report, we'll include something like this or a clean list for reference, but in the report, it will include, there's a document called, what is it, full combined list.
Yeah, right.
okay,
And that has all of the details that the groups worked out.
okay.
And so that'll be in the full report.
I don't know if anybody's watching me. I'm just like waggling this thing around. It's probably distracting if you're trying to read this chart, but is it okay if I stop sharing?
Mhm.
Okay.
Can I just ask about the verb, the verbs that we have in the recommendations? So we say, for example, in the city government toolkit, the city will ensure that equity issues are considered. So is it will, shall? Is there any, I mean, is there some, does someone know something about that more than I do? Because I just wonder if that's the right, not that I object to it, I'm just saying, is that the right tense? Is it, should it be shall?
Yeah, shall is tough because that shall has legal prescriptions to it, which in this report
Ah, okay.
it cannot be legally binding. So I'd
Will
shy away
does
from the
not.
word shall. Must or will endeavor to, those type of things, that's fine. But shall is the one I'd say, avoid.
Good to know. Thank you.
Oh, I'll mention one thing in terms of the big subject of housing and transportation. And this is a conversation I had with Christy by email a little while ago. I'm not actually there in the document, but I thought there might be a place for us to say that the city should make an explicit commitment to increasing the supply of affordable housing. Oh, maybe it does say Monona should take steps to increase. All right, let me put it this way. We have a number of planning documents related to housing, and probably the newest, the most recent one is the city's comprehensive plan. And the housing section talks about affordable housing, but does not make a commitment, a direct commitment. Speaking subjectively, it seems pretty carefully worded to avoid making an explicit commitment. And instead, it expresses an interest in affordable housing and says things like we should look into this or take into consideration. I don't remember the specifics, but my point is that there's a lot of hedging. And so an additional point that we don't actually have in the recommendations right now could be to recommend that the city commit to increasing the supply of affordable housing in a policy document.
Also, Christy did send over some suggestions from Doug. So I guess maybe I'll drop those in the folder in case, I don't know if those are things that.
I think I put them in there.
Oh, you did great.
No, I haven't announced it to anybody, but I think it's in there.
So if folks want to look at that and see if there's anything else you want to stick in that housing recommendation.
Yeah, and some of them I think we have covered and others we don't. And I don't know how specific we want to be. Christy, I don't know if you have a sense of that. in terms of the specific points that Doug provided. I don't know how granular it's helpful to get on those.
Yeah, I don't think the specificity is necessarily needed.
Yeah.
I know, like, when I look at our 2008 housing plan, it says that we should work on affordable housing, and so it's been said many times. But how can we say it where we really emphasize it? That it's really becoming a dire situation at this point. If we want to continue to be this dynamic community, like while all the other communities around us become even more dynamic. So I don't know how we emphasize it stronger.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's very much that's very much my concern, and I guess my way of thinking about it was, let's as a city actually say that in a policy document rather than seeming to beat around the bush in our policy documents. And I did take a look at the City of Madison's plan. And it's much more explicit in terms of goals around affordable housing. I'm not saying it's detailed, but there is an explicit commitment. Anyway, I don't mean to take too.
I suspect
Yeah.
Monona still has some mixed feelings about it that is going on, because I think it was the 80s or so, they were made great efforts to get rid of low-cost housing in the city. And so I think there still may be some residual lack of commitment.
Yeah. Well, I've even heard them say, we'll never do that again. It's in reference to Garden Circle. You often hear Garden Circle mentioned. And that was a Section 8 housing. It sounded like it was, I don't know the history around that, but it sounded like it was well intentioned, poorly, a lot of, poor
It was
practices and
more the
policies and
Garden
management that
Circle,
happened.
it was in 2 trailer parks.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and then some commercial buildings too were condemned for the sole purpose that they thought they could get more tax money out of a new commercial building in the area up by Water Tower Place, that whole area.
Oh, yeah.
So I think there might be some residual ambivalence about it.
Yeah. So let me ask, are people in favor of adding that kind of recommendation?
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I was upset with the city officials at the time. I said, this is ridiculous. I mean, so you can just condemn my house and say that a 1959 ranch, you can get more taxes if you build a 3-story that can actually see the lake from the 3rd story,
Oh, by the way, I guess I didn't finish the job in terms of the points that Doug Plowman had provided Christie with. I started to get them up there. I copied them out of an email and then didn't finish the job.
I'm familiar with that workflow.
Yeah, there are more and more, unfortunately. There's just these things that somehow I left halfway through.
Where did you put it? Because I'm
No, I didn't. I thought that I did, but I didn't. So
Okay.
I will do that.
Okay, because I'm looking at the clean list combined in, and I'm not sure if you guys are going off the full list combined or the clean list combined right now.
They're both the same, except the full list has the detail.
Okay,
So they're the same recommendations. It's just the clean list just has that highlight.
okay.
And the full list combined has the detail.
Karen, I have a question. Did disappear out of here about educational opportunities for community members?
Let me see. I think that is still in there. It might have gotten moved to go with something else. Let me see. Now, was that a group A or group B?
Well, it would be under Group B because it had to do with community members receiving education. And I know that I argued for the training for people in city government, that it's more than just the staff and people on committees and commissions. It's also people who volunteer for the city, who have public facing volunteer roles with the city, need the education.
Yeah,
I-
I thought that was in there, but I'm scrolling. Let's see.
The only thing is, it says capacity building, people need the information. But that was, it looks like all that's,
Was it under that one? Do you remember?
yes, it was under that one originally.
Okay, I'll go back and I'll highlight. I'll just make myself a comment to go back and because that was important. So I'll go back and make sure that that gets in there.
And the group, yeah, the Group B document. It's something.
Okay. I guess for anyone else, are you seeing any? I guess the questions to ask are, does this look like the list Everybody cool with this? Are there any recommendations where you think they need more explanation or detail that we need to work out? So really we're looking at the home stretch here. So the idea would be we have the writing finished going into our next week's meeting. And then next week is review to put the final touches on. And so the question would be if there's anything in here that you think shouldn't, if there's anything not in here that you think should, and then looking at that full combined list, like Marianne just called out, are there any details that are missing or any of these that need to be filled out more? And then where it says other Group A recommendations, I envision those going into an appendix.
Okay. Yeah, because they're kind of drilling down at a very granular level.
Mhm.
Yeah, the other one again was for the city government, and I'm trying to think, we were at the retirement party about 2 weeks ago, and I'm trying to remember if it was, I wrote it down at the time, but I don't have the note with me now. Was it 7,000 hours of volunteer time for the fire department? I mean, it was thousands of hours of people putting in actual shift time, not talking about training time, because the training time was on top of that.
So are you saying like comparing?
Well,
training-
I just think that it says elected leaders, city staff, and residents serving on committees and commissions. I think we need to add and volunteers who are public, present a public face of the city. Also, they need to be included because.
Yeah, I'll look for that too. I know that language is there, Marianne, somewhere.
I just found it. It's, oh, where is it? What page is this?
Under 7, I mean,
Yep.
they're city people. The language for community people, which is not the volunteers for the city, kind of a different expectation on my part, was under the workspace B document about education. So that was on the workspace B document, but on the training for participants in city government was out of workspace A. And
Okay, so let me make a note to myself to combine with workspace B. So we have the whole thing.
okay.
So one of the things I'm seeing in the first 3 A, B, and C of other Group A recommendations seem to be of a piece as the way that we've talked about them, but not necessarily connected in the language. For example, one of the reasons we talked about engaging youth in governing is to develop leadership, not just support new members of council and committees and commissions. I guess the idea of a pipeline of leadership development is kind of what we were talking about at one point. And A, as it stands now, just seems to not require anything from the city until someone shows up, right? And I guess the thing that we were talking about is it's going to take some effort to get people to see that they can be right leaders in city government, right? And that's going to be that's a speed bump right there. And so I just don't want to let the city off the hook of like, I mean, it needs to be leadership development, not just like being welcoming once they show up at the door. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, feel free to edit as you see fit.
Okay.
So the
Catherine?
idea was everybody's recommendations would make it for a really long list of recommendations. And so when I put this list together, it was based on the feedback from the group that you wanted a somewhat manageable list. So group A had gone through a process of kind of ranking importance, relevance. I can't remember the factors. It was a tough decision, but there were several goals where everyone, it was like a scale of 1 to 4. Everyone put number 1. So the ones that are in the main recommendation list are the ones where everyone in group A agreed that it was a high priority. And then the ones that are listed under other group A recommendations, those are the ones that were anywhere below that. So the idea is that there's a somewhat manageable list, what is it, 20-ish goals that we add more details to. And then there are other really great ideas that are under other group A recommendations that should still be passed forward, but perhaps for someone else to develop and build out. And that you still want to have the wording right. So definitely still edit those. But the idea was that the other 20 recommendations would have more meat behind them in the report. Does that make sense?
Karen, what Jason had us do is like a graph like this.
Mm-hmm.
And the one quadrant was very important and short time frame.
Right.
Was very important, longer time frame. So some of that stuff was very important, but it needed a prerequisite before you could get to it. And then on the other side was slightly less important, but short time frame, and slightly less important, long time frame.
Yep. And I remember from one of our very first meeting how much it pains this group to have to rank things in order of importance, because yes, they are all important. However, so, I mean, I think, that's the kind of thing that works really well to kind of force yourself into making some of those tough decisions, because there's just so much work to do.
But it's just the number ones were short time frame and very important. The number twos were very important, but was going to be a long haul to accomplish it.
Mm-hmm, right.
So Catherine, I'm kind of curious, in terms of that one recommendation that got bumped down to the appendix, is it the fact that it's separate? Does that mean it can't? It
No,
can't carry the
I
meaning
just-
that was originally intended, or is it a matter of adding some language to it to make sure that connection is there?
It just seems to me those three things were a conversation that we had about how it is. I mean, it goes back to the term limits conversation. It goes back to the, new leadership. Well, people don't necessarily see themselves as qualified as being hailed by, city government service and committees and commissions and things like that. And just making it more proactive, like a leadership development project, right? So in a leadership development project, you don't just wait for people to show up and declare themselves to be leaders. You work with people at a grassroots level on baby steps and sort of declare that, what they're doing is leadership. And why don't you consider this over here, right? So that's, in separating it out, it kind of, I see A as kind of allowing the city just for waiting for people to show up and declare themselves leaders who want to run for office or be on committees. Does that make sense? I mean, I can't remember the DARE, and I wasn't on Group A, so I don't have that history.
You're right that as somebody who's on Group A, and Christy can certainly bow in on this too, the actually A through D are all leadership development and getting people into the pipeline. But then we spelled out what those kinds of practical things would look like.
So maybe it just needs a preamble or something, or a couple sentences before this, before the A, B, C, and D, right? To say they're connected and it's about leadership development.
Group A we tried to make our recommendations very observable and measurable, not just a platitude that everybody could say, oh, that's real nice, pat on the head, thank you, and have it so nebulous that you could never figure out if they actually acted on it.
So do you want us to take time out of the meeting space and just offer up some edits, like everybody commit to a strong read through, and then do you have a due date for that?
Well, we want to have the writing done for our next meeting. So I guess we could, I don't know if you have a thought about that, Jason, but I guess we could put it by like Wednesday at noon so that everyone has a chance to do a read through before our Thursday meeting.
A read through of what's already here.
Well, with other people's edits. So everybody goes through and do all your editing and have that done by Wednesday at noon.
Okay.
And then everyone go back in, take a skim before our meeting on Thursday, because on Thursday it's going to be locked in. Hopefully that's the aim.
Okay. Thank you.
Obviously, if everyone here is like, wait, no, this is horrible, we need to start over, but trying to keep us from lingering.
Nobody's going to say that. No, nobody's going to say that. No.
Yeah. Just try to keep us from lingering. We got one more week to go on this. Really dig in, buckle down, and give it your all from now until Wednesday at noon in the document.
Correct?
I'm sorry, what? Say it again?
This is the clean combined list that we're working off of, correct?
So
just to make sure we're all working off the same document.
No, great question. So this is, let me just link it here. So this one here has all the detail under the recommendations. So I'd say let's look at this one for our recommendations list.
The full combined list.
Yes. Because we want to make sure that we've got the level of detail that you all think is necessary so that whoever's reading this list in the final report has enough information to understand what you want to happen. And actually, Jason, do you think, should we actually send out a different link that has them rearranged into the 3 categories? Or do you think it's fine if folks just edit on here and then we can do the rearranging in the final format?
Maybe just working on this document has some advantages because it's a familiar document to people. It's kind of in the form
that makes sense.
Most closely resembles the subgroup's work style.
That makes sense.
But this discussion is helpful for me because frankly, I've gotten a little lost. I've just been looking at so many documents that I'm just having trouble following the discussion sometimes. I'm kind of getting the points of what people want or are looking at, but having trouble mapping it onto where in the documents people are referring to. And so I just want to revisit what you, our objective that you stated a couple minutes ago, Karen, in terms of a deadline. So are we looking for people to make comments in this document as late as Wednesday next week?
If
At
that
noon?
works for you.
Does that mean you're going to be writing it in 24 hours?
No, I don't, I mean, we definitely wouldn't have the final format, but we'll have everyone's input. And so don't write it as maybe we should do this, or what do y'all think of that? Like, write how you think it should be. In the Google Doc there, let me share my screen here. So in Google Docs, there's this little pencil up here, this drop down. If you click it, you can have editing or suggesting or viewing. So it's easiest if you set this to suggesting, then we can see what was there before. And anyone who just is not tech savvy or doesn't like working in Google Docs, you can feel free to mark up a separate copy and send that to me, and I will transfer it to the Google Doc. That's totally fine.
Right.
But the one we're working off is the full combined list, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
There we go. That one.
Okay. Thank you.
But just try to remember to do that suggesting. If you don't remember, it's fine, because the really nice thing about Google Docs is it saves all the entire version history. So you can actually go back and look to see if you lose something, you can see it, but just makes it easier if you can do suggesting.
So are we still shooting to have, we're still shooting to have a complete draft ready for Thursday's or before Thursday's meeting, so people have a little time to look at it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you and I, Karen, are going to be attempting to write this thing up, and then at the last minute, I mean, hopefully most people's comments won't be at the last minute, but anything that comes in at the last minute will just fold in at the last minute. But we will be writing our merry little tails off all along the way.
And I guess the only section that doesn't have a start on it yet is a next steps, kind of a conclusion to the report. So is there anyone that you feel like that's your lane that would want to take that on? No visionaries?
I feel my time to devote to other things has been compressed lately.
Mm-hmm. You have slightly higher priorities in your life at the moment. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's totally fine. So Jason and I will be working on that. If that's a section we have to tack on after our last meeting,
Yeah.
I think that's fine, because that
Right.
section is based on a final report after our discussions are over. So
Right. Yeah, so I would just encourage people to get to this as soon as possible, because I know, I can predict. I don't even have to predict. I know, since I was in most of the subgroup discussions, that we have a really mixed bag in terms of writing style, in terms of level of specificity. There's a lot of harmonizing that needs to be done. And there's going to be some interpretation, not making things up, but there's always some interpretation to translate things into one consistent fabric of material to present. And so anything that's on a scale of kind of a structural scale of, well, these two pieces seem separate, but they should refer to each other. The sooner we have that kind of guidance from you, the better. If
Do
it's just,
folks feel like it
tweaking
would be too
details.
much to say Sunday at midnight?
That's probably better, you guys. Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's make our deadline Sunday at midnight. Jason and I are meeting Monday afternoon. And then obviously there, but yeah, let's shoot for that. Sunday at midnight. All of your thoughts, wishes, and dreams in this document by then.
All right. We're going to bring this home soon. It does get a little messy. I mean, it's been a little messy. I don't know, this is just a rhetorical question, but my paragraph in the intro about messiness was pretty long. I don't know whether I overemphasized that or not, but it just felt real, All right, so we will meet for the last time next Wednesday. I wanted to know whether
Thursday.
Thursday, right? Sorry, Thursday. And I want to know whether you would like to meet in person for our last time. I mean, this works perfectly well, but we started off in person. It was great to be with each other, and I want to know whether we want to end things that way.
It would be nice, but I'm hesitant to say yes, because I mean, here I'm
Right.
I'm zooming in from from my daughter's in-laws house. I don't know how little Grace will be in another week.
Yeah.
I also want to chime in here. I was going to send a doodle poll to everybody in the committee to sometime in May. Wanted to just have, if you guys are open to having like a little potluck or something at my house, everybody. So we're open to have everybody here, but just something really casual. But it'd be great to do that. But I can send something out, see who's available. It'd be good to just hang out with you guys too. Not doing just this stuff here, but that'll be coming out soon. I'll get that out, but we're looking at sometime in May, like a Saturday or Sunday. So
That's
Thanks,
awesome.
Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry.
Awesome, Jerry. Yeah, great idea.
And if the rest of the group wants to meet in person, I'm sure Larry's doing grandpa duty right now. He does know how to do this.
Yeah, I'd be down for meeting in person. That might be nice. We
And-
talk in the library or something?
We could do the conference room. I have the conference room booked right now for next week, Thursday, from
I
3 to
actually
5.
I have a room got booked for me because when I had coffee with the mayor a couple Saturdays ago, I told her, we might meet in person. She suggested meeting at the below deck. I couldn't remember what the name of the concession place was. The below deck in front of the new little park where the skating rink is in the wintertime, behind the current apartment building. So there's a lot of space in there. It's got a glass wall, a lot of light. So that space is actually reserved. So if we want to meet in person, we could meet there.
Let's do it.
Sounds good. And if anyone gets hung up or you get hung up, Marianne, we can always Zoom you in.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I'm thinking I'm probably gonna have to zoom in, just because I have an event I'm supposed to be at 5:30 and
Oh,
so yeah, I apologize. I'll just
Hashtag hybrid life.
yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Do we have the capability of Zooming?
Yeah, I'll bring my. I have a laptop and a mic I can bring.
Yeah, I think we might be able to broadcast it on one of the TVs. There won't be a camera, so Christy wouldn't be able to see the room, but for your laptop, Karen. But
I have my webcam.
Ah.
Yeah, so we can do that.
Okay. Thanks. That gives me a
Okay.
little flexibility too.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, great. So
Well,
see you in a
happy
week.
editing.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna be listening to the gears grinding, even from my home. I probably won't be able to sleep hearing all those gears grinding this weekend. All right, and we'll see you next week, either at the concession stand. God, it feels like we're going for ice cream or something, or by Zoom if you can't make it there. So be well till then, and I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
I'll second. Oh.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Have a great
Good
evening,
night.
everybody.
Enjoy the
See you
warm.
next week.
Bye-bye.